Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Coffee and Open Source, a place to meet some new friends, have some great conversations, and maybe learn something away. I'm your host, Isaac Levin. And if you're enjoying the conversations here, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, whether you're watching or listening. Also, if you or someone you know would like to come on and have a chat with me, you can find me on whatever social media platform that you are on, because I'm probably there too. And if you want to know what my handle is, you can go to isaac.r11.com and you'll see a list of all the places. With that out of the way, I'm looking forward to my conversation. We were talking about all sorts of random stuff, but I'm interested to learn more about their story and tech. So my guest today is Brian Alvey. Brian, do you want to say hello? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. It's good to be here. I love your show. This is a lot of fun. And people don't know, but we just spent like the best half hour of my life chatting before this, and they missed
Bet
all of it.
that
So let's
I
try
mean,
to bring some of that here.
best is an overstatement, but we can definitely have
Best
some
half
fun.
hour of my day.
Oh,
I'll
there
give
we
you
go.
that one.
That I'll take. That I'll take every single time.
Mm.
All right, Brian. So with that, I'd love to have our conversation get started with how you got started. Like, when did you realize technology was the thing for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I talk to my kids about this stuff a lot because they're going through like college age, figuring out what
Sure.
they're going to do with their lives. Some of them are like laser focused and know it's. I didn't know. I thought I was going to be a comic book artist and draw superheroes. I mean, you see Iron Man and then
Yeah.
a little statue in the back, like all like. I just thought I was going to do that, and then I went to college and like an art degree is no good, so I got a physics and astronomy, like a rocket science degree, and then I didn't go into that. And then thankfully, a couple of years later, the web happens, which is like a good marriage of art and science. So at some point, I realized, science is good, but technology is how you take science and solve people's problems. And I just got very good at that. And I'll tell you, actually, my strength is I'm not great at anything.
Mm,
So in like art, I'm like an 8 or a 7 on a good day. In science, I'm an 8 or a 7. So when I compete with somebody, just learned when I would compete with somebody very technical, I'd beat them with something that was just easier to use, better looking, more creative, more friendly. Compete with an artist, I will crush them technically because
mm,
they may be a 10 at art, but they're a 2 at tech. And I'm a 7 or 8 or both at both. And so I just kind of realized like that's my thing. I try to make things that are for people like me who don't want to think or know exactly what's
sure.
happening, but they want to get things done. And so I kind of fell into this thing, and I ended up with a tagline, which is I build software that makes creative people more powerful.
Yeah.
So if you're a person who wants to be creative and prolific, you plus my software, 30 times more prolific than you would be without. Kind of like an LLM.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of like an LLM. That's quite the comparison. I mean, I like to kind of talk about like the creative versus a more analytical way of thinking, right? Like, we were talking about this before we got started about like the creativity that exists in technology, and I was thinking
Mhm.
about this the other day about how technology has changed like how creators or creative people actually go about doing their job, right? I was thinking about like Adobe Premiere and Photoshop and Canva and all these new AI sort of based tools that allow you to kind of build, generate images, generate video. I'd love to kind of get your question is, what is the most optimal amount of technology or technical acumen that somebody who is on the more, creative side of the world, like what's the best, ratio for them, do you think?
I don't know if it's a ratio because I feel like I'm 50-50 or I'm
Sure.
just bad at both, right? So I lean on the other one, like I was saying. It's hard to say on that. I do know that I was talking with a friend years ago, 20, 30 years ago, and he made this sort of prediction, or he said this thing which is I thought was interesting, and I was like, I wonder if this is going to actually happen. He's like, you know how we copy and paste text and we do text things and move text things around all day long? Our children are going to do that with video.
Mm,
And this is when like video players were terrible. You had like a real player on your web. You like it wasn't built in. Like it was video was hard and it was heavy and big. It was a terrible. It just that can't be possible. And then the little flip cameras came out, and then HD video and all these things got better. And you realize like, wow, actually, what you just described, right? My kids can go into iMovie and just remix things or CapCut or whatever on TikTok, right? And they can just work that like that with video. And I think what's next? What's next for people? What are they going to be able to do? And when you watch again this rise of LLMs and this big equalizing wave of transformation, um, it's kind of unlimited, right? It's orders of magnitude. You're 100x more powerful, 1,000x more powerful. So I don't really know how much of either one you have to have. I do think it's funny to watch people who are able to crank out software at a rate they've never cranked out before,
yeah.
quickly run out of ideas. Like they
Mm,
literally say, I've got 30 ideas. I just have no time to build them. And then they get OpenClaw and they're like, all right, I've built 3 things and I'm done. I'm out of ideas.
yeah.
And you realize like you are the limiting factor here. So I don't know if there's a ratio, a recipe, or anything like that. I just think being constantly curious, learning new things, but then actually having things you want to see happen in the world
Yeah.
is the missing factor. And I don't know if that's a creative or a scientific thing.
Yeah, and I mean, first off, I agree to all of that. I think too, like I think that there is a good amount of, resistance to like the use of some of these tools because I think that it takes away like the artisanal like nature of like being creative, right? Like I was talking to my kid. My kid's 10 and they're very much right now into like creating music, like video game style music. So like I got them like FL Studio on their computer and they've been like learning how to mix beats and do all these things. And I jokingly told him like, "Oh, you could probably like loop that and then like have some AI that creates." And like, "No, no, 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 no AI." And so and I kind of laughed. I'm like, "What do you mean no AI? Like AI is everywhere." And they're like, "No, AI is gross. Like you don't want slop." And my see it's 10, right? So like they're just hearing what they're hearing. But I'll tell you what, like at least I can speak for my kids and some of my friends' kids that are on the same age. They can spot AI better than anything, any adult that I've met. Like they'll see something on the screen and they'll say that's AI right there. This thing doesn't look real, and they can point out so quickly. Whereas me, I struggle. Sometimes I get tricked, right? And the reason why I do that whole little thing is I'm curious for you. It's like, you know, when is it okay to like augment your abilities with AI versus just replace low hanging fruit with AI? Because you're talking about like, oh, I have an idea. Okay, I'll just have AI build that idea for me. Versus like, iterating back and forth with an LLM to actually build something.
So I used to think that, when you get older, the stuff that was like the technology that was possible when you were in high school, college, whatever, like that's like where people kind of like that's it. And the new stuff that comes along, that's like nobody likes it, right? Old people don't like the new tech, right?
Sure.
That's always that thing. But it flipped, like you're saying with your kid. My daughter's 17, my oldest son is 23, and both of them hate AI.
Yeah.
And if you say I'm going to use AI to use it, they're like, you just wasted 6 bottles of water.
Yeah.
You're bad for the planet. That's slop. Or you're destroying the creative economy, and you're just putting artists out of work, and it drained their brains. All this stuff, they're so anti AI. It's just kind of fascinating to watch. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, no, no, lean into it. AI is amazing. This is great. And like,
Sure.
how am I the champion of the most cutting edge thing today instead of old and done, and my kids are the champion of the most cutting edge thing? And so I think back to a couple different movies I watched because I've been talking with friends about this. AI only got good in the last like 3 or 4 years, right? So
Yeah.
LLMs, and then everything past that. Before that, it was okay, but it wasn't ready, right? It just wasn't good enough. But I asked friends, this is 10 years ago at like a dinner party, people who like worked in creative industries, which one of us at the table is going to be the last one whose job can be replaced by a bot? And you would say an agent now, right?
Yeah.
Or AI. And the people who held out the longest, these were like cool people who were like, I don't know, managed comedians who are on SNL, or like we're, like new famous people, right? And worked with famous people. And they would say it's that like a 5-minute comedy routine. AI will never be able to write that. That creative spark that my comedian has, they can never replace that. Or write a 22-minute sitcom. And the thing that I think blows everybody's minds is that AI flipped it. It's actually artificial creativity, not artificial
Mm-hmm.
intelligence,
Yeah.
because it's language based. So what happens is the AI came in, and once it was finally good, it actually came for the creative jobs first.
Sure.
And it still kind of is like a little shaky on self-driving cars, or other stuff, right? It's pretty funny how that just happened. And so I think about movies I've watched that have these themes of what does it mean when everybody in the world is handed superpowers? How do you become like remarkable and rise above all of that? So like what's the movie, The Incredibles?
Yeah.
Like the villain syndrome, like his entire plan is not to kill the heroes, or like make them watch their kids get like punished or whatever, like in front of them. It's, I'm going to give everybody in the world superpowers,
Yeah.
because when everybody's special, nobody's special, and that's how he's going to eliminate them. But if everybody is special, which is what just happened, like we all have an unlimited ability to just generate software, design songs, anything. How do you, when everybody in the world has a magic wand, be the superstar with the better use of the magic
Yeah.
wand or something like that? And there's one other really good movie, Tim's Vermeer. Have you ever seen Tim's
Have
Vermeer?
not, no.
Okay, Penn and Teller produced it. It's about this guy who created a bunch of 3D software. Tim Jennison, I think is his name. And he looked at, so this artist, Vermeer, in the, I don't know what, 1600s or something like that. Probably if you look back on the history of all painters, right? Rembrandt, all these people. I think Vermeer is like top 10 of artists ever.
Sure.
But it could actually be he couldn't paint and he sucked at art. And so here's what he did. This guy Tim went and reconstructed these. Like, I'm pretty sure, based on the artifacts in his paintings and the way he painted with light in a way that was like nobody else ever did. I think he was tracing something. I think he was using like one of those camera obscura rooms where they project the thing on the
Yeah,
wall.
yeah.
There's something he was doing. So he actually proved over the span of like a year or two, and that nearly died doing it from the fumes in this little storage space where he was working with like old paints and stuff. He kind of proved like this is the device that he used to take this scene and render it into canvas. And he might not have actually even been good at sketching. He might have
Hmm.
been the world's worst artist, and he created the best paintings in the world and is heralded as like a top 10 artist. Was he cheating?
Yeah,
Like, is
yeah,
that a hack? Like, was that wrong? Is he not the world's best artist? Look at what he did.
yeah.
So I'm kind of a fan of the output matters more so than really do you have that craft. So, but maybe I don't know.
No,
Maybe I'm
no.
different.
I first off, that's fascinating. Tim Vermeer. It's like a documentary sort of thing.
Yeah, so,
I'll
so
have
it's
to
Tim's Vermeer. So
Tim's
Vermeer was
Vermeer.
the artist, and this guy
Yeah,
Tim went and made his own Vermeer. He literally recreated a painting, took it to England, and like David Hockney and like the Queen's Gallery, they went and they looked. They're like, this may actually be better than a Vermeer that he had made. But he used
sure.
Vermeer's process, and he proved
Yeah.
the guy literally had like zero artistic talent, or did he?
That's
Right?
fast. That's fascinating. Yeah, I mean that. I think it definitely introduces like because I was thinking about this the other day about how in tech specifically, like we talk about tools, we talk about code, we talk about programming languages, we do all of that, right? But like
Mhm.
tech has never been about writing code, right? Like tech has always been about finding a problem statement, finding a problem, and then identifying the solution to that problem statement, and then using whatever tools are at your disposal to do that. And in this particular case, this individual, like he had a vision to paint some amazing masterpiece, but he didn't have the
Mhm.
skills. So he figured out what tools can I use to implement my vision and put together to make this amazing thing. Which is that any different than writing software?
I don't think it is, and I don't even think like I think back a lot. My oldest kid does a lot of stuff with MIDI and
Yeah.
digital audio workstations and like Pro Tools and stuff like that. And I remember in college when I kind of get into it, it was a long time ago. It's black and white Macintoshes, right? But like being able to program notes and watch that thing go, and just realizing that like sheet music that gets played on this little Macintosh with like eight crappy voices sounds one way, but if you hand that sheet music to a string quartet or 80-piece orchestra or the Rolling Stones, it comes out differently.
Yes.
That kind of weird, that spec, that thing that gets interpreted, fed into when I first saw HTML and building websites. I'm like, oh, same HTML running on a phone looks like this, running on a Microsoft browser versus a Netscape browser versus an Apple browser. It's all kind of interpreted sheet music. So I don't think the code itself matters. I think the code is the spirit of the thing. It's rare that the actual code matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think all this stuff is interrelated, right? You think about, a lot of people, there's a direct correlation between like computer science and math, right? Because of just the
Mhm,
nature of how computer science works at like the electron level. And you also have
mhm.
this other flip side where it's okay, well, there's all this creativity in software, but then you hear about okay, there's all this creativity in abstract math, and I think about this all the time. It's like how we're always predisposed to like, oh, you're a left side brain or a right side brain individual, and you can't really cross. But like the real thing is like all this stuff is some interconnected thing around the human experience, right? And trying to replicate that in some way is fascinating to me. One, because what do we really need to replicate the human experience? Two, and then secondly,
Mhm.
like if we were able at some point to replicate the human experience, would we enjoy the output as much of it? Like, would you like a song that was created perfectly the way you want to hear from an LLM or from some tool versus someone like the Beatles playing a song and you hear like, that what this one instrument is out of tune a little bit and like there's that elegance to it not being perfect.
So I had never thought about this answer before in my life, but you mentioned when we were before the show, Britney Spears, and I think about the song itself doesn't. It's there's two stories that go along with that piece of art, and one is kind of the backstory of the artist,
Yeah,
and one is your own story with that piece of art. So I actually think that the song itself can be terrible, can be amazing, can
sure.
be whatever. Um, I think that I don't think that that matters. The reason that we love this one Iron Maiden album is because it came out at that time in your life
Yeah.
when like you had time to listen to music, and the ones after that were never as good, and the ones before it were not that great. But like that one's amazing. But that's a you thing. That's
Yeah.
not whether that's Iron Maiden's best album or the U2's best album or whatever, right? That's a you thing. You associate it with times in your life, and you put things into that song. You can do that with an AI song just as well. And then the thing that I don't think you can get with an AI, which I think makes it harder for somebody to fall in love with an AI song, use that as their wedding song, play it at their funeral, like listen to it on loop, is that you don't have a backstory of
Yeah.
that AI,
Yeah.
but you do have a backstory of like, oh, Britney Spears, this is her story. She had this thing happen, and then this, and this is her song about this breakup. And there's so many things from the artist and so many things from the listener that get infused into that thing in that moment, that there's a reason why those bands who are like put out stuff in your high school still get your money when
Yeah.
you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely true. Like, I'm a millennial, so there's a point in time in I think every like adult's life when they realize like, oh, I can afford to go to concerts,
Yeah.
right? And like, I think now like a lot of millennials are seeing like, oh, like all those bands I listened to like in the early 2000s, like they're all like in their 40s and 50s and they're dads and they want to make some money, so they're going on tour. Like, I'm gonna give as much money as possible, and
Sphere residency.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I see the sphere like that. The sphere is a funny thing to me because one, I think the idea is absolutely like genius, like the whole like
Mhm.
immersive experience. But also, I think they've done a very, very good job of like catering what sort of musical acts, and then
Yeah.
mixing that in with like movies and things like that, with like the Wizard of Oz. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, but again, like I think to your point is very solid about like the subjectiveness of art, right? I think like we were talking about Vermeer earlier, it's like, okay, it's like the greatest top 10 painters of all time. Like, but who's top 10, right? Because I think all of
Mhm.
us, we see art and we have our own opinions of it. And I think one of the
Mhm.
things that I struggle with when you see something that's been kind of generated based on some predictive model is, yes, the output's going to be different every time, but like the intent is for it to be ideal every time, if that makes sense, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not trying to be subjective in any way. It's trying to be as predictable as possible.
Mhm. Yeah. So back to Britney Spears, she was not the most popular artist in the
Sure,
world at that time because she was the best. By far, she was not. She was the most widely accessible.
sure.
That like was well liked enough by the lowest common denominator by most people. Therefore, she was number one.
Yeah,
Not because she was actually better at what she did. And you mentioned a couple of things. The Sphere is a funny thing because growing up in New York, people hate the Dolans, the people who own Madison Square
sure.
Garden, the
Yeah, yeah,
Knicks,
yeah.
but they built the Sphere. How did those people build that thing and Disney didn't? The Sphere is incredible. So I don't know. I'm kind of a fan of the Sphere.
Yeah, and I maybe I'm missing. I feel like I heard they're
Yeah.
building another one. It's
So they're
like,
building a smaller one in
yeah,
another
yeah,
city. I
yeah.
forget where, but it's gonna be
Yeah,
a smaller one. I've seen like a mock-up of it or
yeah.
whatever. But it is. Have you been inside the Sphere?
No, I have not. Like, obviously, like I've flown into Vegas and I've seen it, and like the
Mhm.
first time
Yeah.
you fly into Vegas and you see it, it is kind of like startling because
Yeah.
depending on what
It's like a creature on the
whatever the
horizon.
rapper
Yeah.
is for it for that particular, I think the rapper was it was like right after they announced that the Oakland A's were moving to Vegas, so it was a giant baseball. Um, and I just looked at it, and you have this moment of like, is that a real thing, or am I having like a stroke, right? Am I kind
Yeah.
of like so? I would love to know like
Huh.
the whoever had the idea for that and like what their vision was compared to what actually exists. And that kind of like works with tech as well. Like when you think about building things, or when you think about like some idea that you have, since you do have some creative background in you, that is like I guess non-technical, like when
Mhm.
you envision something and then when it's actually implemented and it's out there, how often does it deviate from your vision? Like, oh, I wasn't expecting it to do exactly this, and that's for the better.
Yeah. So a couple answers for you. One is I think that's the most fulfilling thing about software is
Sure.
when you do release something and you expect everybody's going to drive this thing like I drive it, and then they fly it or they take it underwater. They
Yeah.
do something weird. So when it's the first time when somebody does something with yours that you give them that you just didn't expect, that's very gratifying. So I like that a lot. Another thing that I told a long time ago that stuck with me was this quote. I don't know what the quote is. I'm not going to say it in a very smooth way, but like it's not the poem that you set out to write, it's the poem that gets written.
Mm.
So like just do the process and get to the end. But like I think that's in the Rick Rubin book. The Creative Act or the Creative something, whatever his big book is. That is a mind-blowing book about just it's like the people who practice and prepare and whatever are putting themselves in a situation to be ready for when that creative thing happens, whether it's coming from another dimension, whether it's divine, right? There's this thing that happens. But like if you don't put yourself in that mode, in that place with friends, in that environment, in that amount of time, that amount of reps, like it's just the lightning's never going to
Yeah.
strike. And so I absolutely do think like setting out to create something is good, over planning it, overthinking it, but like go do the thing, get it out there so the next one can come. And what gets made was what was meant to be made.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Rick Rubin. I find Rick Rubin a fascinating character because like he's been openly asked like what do you think of like this album he did? He's like he has like no he like the albums that he's produced he doesn't really like and doesn't really care what
Right.
people think.
He has no musical skill
Yeah,
either.
right.
That's
Yeah,
that's
and he
hilarious.
played bass. He played bass for like a punk
Yeah,
band like in the 70s or whatever. But
right.
like yeah, whatever.
Mhm.
But I think
He doesn't deserve to be in the room with the Beastie Boys. Is kind of
that's
the thing. You know what I mean?
well, I
It's
mean,
funny.
yeah, exactly. I think what's fascinating to me about Rick Rubin is I think of that as, you hear, the quintessential like definition of an artist, right? Somebody who does it solely for themselves. They don't really care about outside perspective. And I think about when you build software, like, hey Brian, I want you to go write some software, but like do it whatever you want and we'll be happy with the output, right? Like that is something that just doesn't exist. So I think that's like one of the
Right.
I guess barriers that you have between like pure creative work and I guess more business work is that you have a stakeholder, right? And that
Mhm.
stakeholder is not you, hardly ever, right?
Mhm. No, it never is. So man, so many things you got me thinking about. So the Rick Rubin thing was interesting because if you do disconnect and say like we're just going to make the best thing we can, I look at a lot of artists and I don't know if this is because I worry about myself being like a one-hit wonder, but I look at a lot of people who had that one song that was 3 years ago, now it's 10 years ago, now it's
Yeah,
20 years ago. Are they ever going to do it again? And when you ask them like do you get sick of playing the hit, like literally there are artists who are like okay, now it's time to play the hit,
yeah,
and they play the hit. Do you get sick of that? They're like, well, no, I don't hate this song, but I've heard interesting interpretations of people, how they feel about their greatest work. And they're like, that I can't control what is going to resonate with the most people.
sure.
So this one resonated with 30 million people. My next song resonated with 2 million people. And
Yeah,
then my next album, nobody cared about. And I still think the album I just did is my best one. It's my best. It resonates
sure.
with me. I
Yeah, yeah.
love it for certain reasons. But like, that's great that everybody loved that song. I'll play it for them. But I don't know that you can force that. So in terms of software for a customer, I don't know. I don't think about it as like maybe like an enterprisey software. I'm building a thing for you to do, I don't know, a podcast or whatever, like a specific bespoke app. I do think more about building things that are more widely usable and then
Mhm.
seeing what people do with them. So I don't think I ever am building something to one person's spec in my life. Even when it's me, I kind of like feel my way through it and I don't worry about it.
Yeah, I have a story for that actually. Um, so you mentioned an individual that people in New York aren't huge fans of, right? So I actually worked on a project years ago to that specific individual, like basically give him the ability to like delegate his calendar to people, right?
Mhm.
And it let
This is
and
the
this is
individual who's also in a band and plays on stage and does all this stuff, right? Yes. Anyway, keep
yeah,
going.
yeah, right. So
Yes,
I
which is
remember,
wild.
and I remember people would tell me, and I was like, okay, well, what, just like typical like Outlook, like delegation rules don't work. No, because he has 3 houses, and every house has a different person who's in charge, and whatever, and they're going through like they're and. And I remember talking to somebody else who's working on this project. I think this is the only time in my entire life that I've built software for one person. And
Yeah. Okay. So I was hoping you were going to say that because with LLMs, OpenClaw, the whole revolution, the software thing, I have a friend that is building apps for himself
sure,
all day long.
sure,
He's like, I should put them in the app store, but he like gave me this little thing that like show how much power is coming in and out of my laptop all day long versus watts and stuff like that. There's something called watts happening. But like it's you can actually build software for an audience of one because it doesn't cost anything anymore. So
yeah,
keep going. So you build this thing
yeah.
for this family office.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we built this, and afterwards, like, and maybe this is just my ego, but I felt like no, I felt no, I guess, pride in the fact that I built something that only one person is going to take advantage of,
Mhm.
right? I mean, to your point earlier, like I build software for myself all the time because, I'm a lazy person in tech, so I want to automate some
Yeah.
stuff that I do. I had this silly idea, like I built something that takes my podcast episode and it clips it using AI into smaller segments that I can post on social media. Like okay, it takes me 15 minutes to do it, or I could write an app that does it for me faster, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I get pride out of that because I'm the person that's enjoying like the direct I guess output of that work that I'm doing. Plus it's just nice knowing you're building something. But I guess when you go build software, like a lot of people in tech, they think about like the amount of users they imprint upon, right? It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm building this and like thousands of people use it, millions of people are going to use it, hundreds of millions of people are going to use it, right? And like I know some people that take pride in like, oh, I built software that's been used by many, many, many people. And I'd love to get your thoughts because I mean, you're in this space, right? Like you
Yeah.
software that's used by lots and lots of people. So I'd like kind of like your thoughts is like the scale of software and like when do you actually lose connection to the end user?
Yeah, okay. There's another like 5 questions in there.
Yeah, of course.
I
That's
will
what I did, by
say
the way.
no. No, I will say I wonder about ego in this. So when I think of my career, like I had a career in like print magazine stuff before the web existed. The web came out. I built 2 websites in 1995. They were Business Week and TV Guide. You have heard of Business and TV Guide, the first, right?
A little
And
bit,
then
yeah.
since then, it's been like hundreds of brands, either ones I owned or ones I helped launch for somebody else, and like all these names. And then even now with WordPress VIP, like we have a WordPress hosting platform, and we have like the White House, NASA, TechCrunch, The Onion, New York Post, Rolling Stone. Like I could name hundreds of things, and you will have heard of every single one of
Sure.
those things. And so and when I talk about loving working with enterprise customers and us having like, a couple thousand customers, but you've heard of all of them. And then WordPress.com, the consumer hosting platform, has hundreds of millions of blogs. You've never heard any of them, right?
Yeah.
I wonder, is it an ego thing that I like to be associated with these? And I try to at least convince myself it's not, and say, I really, really, really like the problems of those customers, things at scale when your database is the largest or you have the most DDoS attacks all day long. Like, where can I go to be working on the cutting edge of solving technological scale problems? But for like a whole tracksuit full of, like logos you've heard of. Like
Yeah.
I used to joke that I wanted I had an assistant like 10, 15 years ago at a company with a lot of customers that you've heard of. And I just wanted one of those NASCAR suits that was just all the logos of our customers. I would do that again today. I think that'd be a funny thing. So is that an ego thing, or do I really like problems at scale? And problems at scale are things that happen with companies you've heard of.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I don't, like, you asked a question about scale of software and adoption. I used to also joke at that old company, people we would hire. I'm like, on Monday, when you start your job, you have the ability, and I would never say the ability to like impact millions of people, that you have the ability to ruin the day for
Yeah.
millions of people who went to visit TMZ, but the site was down, or
Yeah.
they went to visit MySpace Topics and the site was down, right? So I would characterize it in more of a please don't screw this up
Yeah.
kind of way. But you do get to impact millions and millions of people. But for everything I think I've reached, there's somebody who's reached 100 times more than me.
Sure.
So I don't know that it's about that reach necessarily. I think you can dazzle that one, sports team owner and make their lives amazing and get
Mhm.
paid for it and feel really good about what you did. And then I think you take those skills on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are tons of examples. Like I love your analogy with like the NASCAR suit, um, because I remember a story I've interviewed for a job years and years ago, and I was talking to somebody, and like that one of the questions they asked me like during the interview was like, "Did you see the list of our customers?" And I said, maybe like it was on your website." And they're like, "Yeah, but do you remember like any of them?" And I think their point was trying to make is like the scale of which that they do business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like phrasing it in a way that was very like egotistical.
Yeah.
And
You
I
should
was,
pay us to work here
yeah, well, I
because we're
mean,
going to look good on your resume.
I was
That's,
just kind
yeah.
of confused. I'm like, I mean, every like big tech company has a ton
Yeah.
of logos. Like, I don't know
Mhm.
what the flex is for.
Mhm.
But then I thought about it, a couple weeks later, it's like they have a sense of pride in like the fact they're able to do these things, right? And I think that there is this fine balance between overconfidence and taking pride in what you do. And,
Mhm.
one of the things I'd love to ask you, it's, as you build something, and then you like ship that MVP or that minimum thing, you have like pride because you got something done. And then like that becomes a slog of turning it into an actual product that can actually be sold to people. And at some point in time, you do get a bit overconfident that because you believe it's going to be successful, it's going to be successful. So tell me a little bit about how that machination has worked for you in the past. And, more than likely, your expectations were not met, right? I'd love to kind of hear a story about that.
Yeah, that goes back to those artists that like they
Yeah.
know the song that is so much better than the hit.
Yeah.
This is gonna be like nobody's gonna remember the hit. They're gonna love this new one,
Yeah.
and then it just fizzles and doesn't go anywhere. I've had the exact same experience with software. You know, a bunch of hits, thankfully, right? Like that's been good, but bunch of misses. And when I think about something that I think is gonna work, I swear, like rereading the Rick Rubin book just makes you feel so much better about it. Like it just wasn't the right time. You know, the Nirvana could have put out their big album and nobody cared,
Sure.
but they happen to put it out the right week, the right whatever, the right time, the right something, the right backstory, the right who knows what, and it just changed. It changed rock, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you know, Guns N' Roses did it before that. Somebody else did it after them. You know, Strokes and stuff. So I don't know that you. I don't know that you can. I don't know that you can just be so invested in those things that you're crushed when the thing doesn't work. So I've gotten good about like I get it. Somebody's not going to get it. There's a term for it though, because you can get very stuck. What you don't want to do is work on the things that aren't resonating, that don't have product market fit
Sure.
for too long. And it's tough. There's really a friend of mine who does stuff with jobs to be done theory and training and stuff. And he talks about supply side selling versus demand side selling.
Yeah.
And you're going to fall into one of those two things very quickly. You'll know in weeks or months when you're out there peddling that thing. And you can help yourself go down the right path if you focus on a problem and solving that problem and don't care what the solution is. But if you get married to a solution early on, if you love your product, this cool thing you invented, you were doing supply side selling, which is I have this thing on a shelf. I'm going to go door to door and find people who want to buy it. That is the hardest thing in the world to do. You're going to waste years of your life. But if you don't get like trapped in that, you just go find the problems and find enough people with problems and then build things for them. There's a way that you can be more demand side selling where people pull the product out of your hands instead of you're knocking on the door and forcing them, begging them to buy it. So I just think that you have to have a bit of a sense of like, okay, this thing isn't working out. I'm going to move on. In the Rick Rubin book, he talks about like literally being pregnant with an idea. Like you can be doing one thing
Sure.
at a time. And if you take 10 years, another Guns N' Roses thing, to create an album, Chinese Democracy, like you just wasted 10 years that you could have had 3 or 4 other shots
Yeah.
at putting an album out there that was going to work. Get it out, like give birth, get it out, give it away, move on, and go give birth to the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's a very like sober kind of powerful concept in that book that helps me just remember. I actually bought a Chinese Democracy t-shirt that I wear, like ironically, like this
Yeah.
thing just reminding me, just don't sit on your stuff. Don't wait, don't be too perfect. Just out the door and move on to the next thing. And people are like, Chinese Democracy, I've never heard of it. Like, yes,
Yeah.
it was their
That's the
worst
point.
album. It took
That's the
them 10
point.
years,
Yeah.
bankrupted the band, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's, that's a great example of like analysis paralysis or, believing in like you have to be perfect. And I think a lot about this, specifically as it pertains like certain areas of a tech organization, right? Like you work with people in product, right? And rightfully so, people in product love their product. They love their babies, right? And occasionally, like someone has to go to them and say, your baby isn't really that good looking, right? Like, and your baby is not like the baby that we need to put in front of 100,000 people. Like it's cool. It brings value to some of these people, but not everybody. And I remember whenever I would have these conversations, like some people in product would just be very, very tied to what they've done. Because again, to your point, they invested so much of their time into it. And, one of the questions I have for you is like, do you remember some points in time in your career when you had to actually just hit the eject button on something? Like you were in the process of building something, you love something so much, you're waiting, but then you just had this epiphany where it's like, you know what, this isn't going to be a thing. Like it's not going to really bring the value that I think that it's going to bring for it. So you had to like slowly basically admit to yourself that your baby wasn't very good looking.
So myself, I can think of at least once. There was a company that I had right before I joined Automatic and WordPress VIP, where it was a social video software platform, and I knew I was kind of in that trap of like supply side selling. Like I
Yeah.
understood what this did. It worked with like celebrities and stuff like that, and every third brand campaign we would do was like the best thing Ogilvy had seen in like a 20-year career. They were like amazed, and the other two would fizzle, and we just hadn't dialed it in
Yeah.
yet. And I could have spent a lot more time trying to dial it in, or I could just get a like walk away from it. And so we ended up just changing directions and going and doing something else. But I have a lot of friends that I've counseled on this, same exact thing. A lot of them that are, they're like, oh, well, okay, my company's run out of money, but we're going to take on some gigs because we want to, I don't know, make our investors whole or something. Like your investors they haven't, they gave up on you 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like there's no need to make these investors whole to like, I don't know what, get a divorce and like lose your custody, like, like ruin your whole family life just to get a, I don't know, $40,000 consulting gig to keep your
Yeah.
company limping
Sure.
along. Like,
Sure.
just put it out of its misery. The investors already said goodbye. Like, you should say goodbye too. So it's a hard conversation to have with other people, but I had this conversation a lot. There are a lot of people who really like, but the world needs this thing. And like, maybe they did a year earlier or a year later, but like, they don't need it now. You can revisit it. Here's a funny thing. That thing that I built with a client, this guy Max, we had this really interesting like social video platform. You would love it. You could like put a link on in a tweet or on an Instagram story. People swipe up, they watch your video, they click a thing, nothing to install. They send you video replies. It comes to it's transcribed. Like, it's a really cool setup. But it's like this very specific recipe for doing this thing to get videos from people, brand safe UGC. And we just, like I said, we kind of gave up on that. But we actually took a week about a month ago, because you can build anything now, and we
Yeah.
rebuilt it all as a WordPress plugin, and we rebuilt like a native Mac app video rendering thing with branding, like all the things we thought like we'd need another 6 years to do. Turned
Yeah.
out it only took another 6 days. So I don't know. I think hopefully that frees people up to let go of something, knowing they can revisit it later.
Yeah.
And if they have to recreate it, it's not going to take them 10 years to recreate it. I think maybe that's a good advice for people to be able to let go of those supply side selling things where you're just like literally begging people to take the thing that you know is amazing, but they don't. That's a hard position to be in. And I'll tell you, this makes me think of another two advice that I give to founders. They're always like, I need a technical co-founder. I need somebody who can like build apps. I'm like, you need a sales co-founder. You
Mm,
need somebody who's going to take your thing that you can build and go to market with it, who's got a Rolodex in the industry you're targeting and has sold something to 50 customers in the past and can sell your thing to 50 customers. So I think a lot of people just discount that. Go to market, get adoption. Like, part of product market fit is having a market
yeah.
and fitting your stuff there, right? Like, it's not product. Product is not the star of product market fit. The buyer is the star of that.
Yeah.
So but these are lessons. Like, I can tell you these things all day long. I'll still forget these lessons.
Sure. Sure. I think too, like I mean, I've had plenty of conversation with founders about how like they go about building an org chart, right? Because I think that to me is like a fascinating experiment. Like, okay, when do I bring in? Because usually how these things work is it's like a couple of engineering folks, like, oh, we have this idea, and they realize like, oh, like we need somebody to like manage our work, so they bring a product person, and then eventually
Mhm,
at some point in time, they're like, oh, we probably should sell this. Like we're getting
mhm,
it investing, but like we really got to show that we're bringing revenue in. And then like they have a go to market team, they have maybe a growth team, and then like
mhm,
a little bit towards like, okay, so now we need to figure out a way to market this, because they've been doing like
mhm.
guerrilla sort of marketing. And I always
Yeah.
joke with them, it's like, so why is marketing the last thing that you're tacking on?
Mhm.
And like the answer is always like, well, we didn't really see the point in marketing at this particular point in time. And I always say, kind of tongue in cheek, so you weren't worried about market fit until you built that entire sales organization and engineering organization and you had product folks. And they just kind of look at me. I would say probably not in disgust or distaste, but they just like,
Yeah.
why are
They're
we having this?
horrified.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, because I think it's hard to see the forest of the trees, right? And I think, good, bad, or indifferent, like marketing kind of has like a nasty sort of taste in a lot of people's mouth,
Mhm,
right? Like marketing is what it is, right? I think a lot of people are very good at marketing, but I think, especially in the tech
mhm.
sector, marketing is this weird sort of has this weird place. And one of the things that I'm curious to hear from you, like you were talking about market fit versus like you were doing the supply marketing versus demand marketing. Like I love that analogy. Um,
Mhm.
and I think, the thing that I want to ask you specifically is like, so some of these skills, these ability to recognize these trends, how much of it is nature versus nurture? Like, is this things that you can build the kind of your legs with experience, or you just have to have a knack for these sort of things? I'm curious to know, as somebody that is kind of you've been doing this long enough, how much do you think of it as like I just had the gene, or I just learned along the way?
Okay. There are like 11 questions in there. I
Well, that's
jotted
what I
down some
do. That's what
notes.
I do. Yeah, yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. You're going to ask me that last part again in a minute.
Yep.
So you were talking about marketing being last. I could talk about that for a long time. I think it's crazy. There are a lot of people who would say if you're going to start a company, the best time to start marketing for it is like 5 years ago,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Just start. Just start a little newsletter group with your friends. Start talking. Become a thought leader. Make a Medium page or whatever. Some kind of thing. Get a Substack, right? Go get a WordPress blog. Go do your thing and talk about it. Become a thought leader in it, and then like everything else will fall out of that. If you're not leading with the marketing, you're crazy. And the nugget of truth in there is that like nothing matters but the story. So back to the Britney Spears thing, back to all these examples. It's that backstory. It's that thing. You have two tech companies with the exact same thing, but like these founders are Andreessen Horowitz backed, Ooh, that makes the story a little more interesting.
Yeah.
How did that happen, right? These ones went on Shark Tank. Okay, wait a second. What's their story? Like,
Yeah.
I'm more excited about that now. So that story that you have, like that all comes from marketing. That like, what is your product? And even if your product goes away, like it's all about the story. So there's Peter Drucker, who wrote business books like, I don't know, 100 years ago, 80 years ago. He's been gone a long time. He said there are only two basic functions of a business, and that's innovation and marketing, and all the
Mm.
rest are costs. And everything else you just described, the support team, the whatever thing, right? Like the real estate, the building lease, whatever this junk is, finance, it's all costs. But innovation and marketing. And if you boil that down, what they're saying is to build a business, and a business is just, I have something that somebody wants enough to pay money for it, right? Otherwise, it's a hobby. So I have a business. Innovation and marketing is just do something amazing and make sure people find out about it.
Yeah.
And if you only do one of those two things, you can actually still make money if you make sure people find out about it. But you can't if nobody finds out about this cool thing you did. It's kind of funny how like you can, if you had to choose between like selling or having the best product, like having the best product does not mean you make money. Selling makes you make money.
Yeah.
It means you make money. So innovation and marketing. And so I kind of live by that thing, which is, and if you think of some of the classic, you say, okay, I have a team. I have 6 developers. What are they missing? Well, somebody to tell the story, somebody
Yeah.
to get people excited, somebody to get investors excited, somebody to go through those steps to sell the product. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Like Steve Jobs didn't solder a board together. He was technical. He worked at Atari. He's a super smart guy. But like Wozniak built the Apple One
Yeah.
and then the Apple II that you used, and then on and on and on. But would we know who he is? Would he have a dollar if not for Steve Jobs there explaining the vision
Sure.
and selling the dream and like making people excited? Like you can't imagine that story without Steve Jobs. You can kind of imagine it without Wozniak, which is sad because he built the Apple One, but still. So I think you have to. I don't. You can't bolt on marketing at the end.
Yeah.
Like if you're getting to that point, I think you've already lost.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the second part of that question that I had, well,
Yeah.
the 11th of the 10th
Yeah.
question I asked,
Thank you.
about the dichotomy between basically, nature versus nurture as it pertains to, how you learn about like seeing trends. Because I think that there are some people that are very, very good at certain areas of business and in tech specifically. And, you look at their history and it's like, oh, you have a very weird history. Like you didn't really work in tech and now you worked at a firm and now you worked at and, you ask them, it's like, oh, I just had a knack for it. So I guess the overarching question is like how much of sort of these, trend analysis or trend or pattern recognition is like nature versus nurture in your opinion?
I don't know if I have like a widely applicable answer for you because I do think you have to like play to your strengths. So
Sure.
if you so I knew somebody who like worked in like I don't know high-end shoe sales or something at like a Nordstrom's or whatever like and they wanted to get into tech and I'm like okay so you're not first off you're not going to dive straight into Java programming.
Yeah.
You're probably going to go like join a startup and do sales because you have some connections and you know some people and you can do that thing right like play to your strengths, take that thing that you know and try to use that as a wedge to get into the next thing. So I think that I don't know if there's a nature versus nurture thing there. I think people are built a certain way. So I don't know if I have a good answer for that. But I don't know. I do know. I don't know what I know about that one. It's an interesting question. Like I just can't definitively say it's either one. I can definitely tell you that most of the most driven people that I know here's a totally different answer than you were expecting. Most of the most driven and successful people I know had a horrible childhood.
Mm,
Just like they were forged in some kind of like horrible experiences, right? Like they were never given any like validation or love or like whatever, like so they became very hungry and they went out to conquer the world. And I often wonder, how can my kids have the same drive that I and some of my most successful friends have without having to suffer?
yeah.
I don't want my kids to suffer. You don't want your kid to suffer. Like that's not a good thing. But how do you get them to have that drive without suffering? Somehow, with at least most of my kids, they're very driven. They're very competitive. They hate to lose. They want to win. They want to beat me at things. Like I think that's very good. They sit there and just run categories on Jeopardy, and I'm like, you're
Yeah.
so young. How do you know all these things I don't know? It's weird because I'm good at this. So I'm happy to see that they've got the drive without having had to suffer. But it is a really interesting thing to talk to people who have made millions and billions of dollars and are just go go go, and all of them are like, yeah, my childhood was terrible,
Yeah.
my parents didn't tell me I was good at anything, so I had to go out and find that and grab it But I don't want my kids to suffer, so
Yeah.
I'm worried that they're not going to be driven.
Yeah, it's funny because that particular story is somewhat cliche in the fact that like a lot of the like great athletes, great
Hmm?
artists, great people in business, right? I think a lot of us, you know, like we struggle to find out who we are. And
Hmm?
I think that you're kind of told who you are in a couple of different ways. Like one, you figure it out yourself, which I think is what most people do. Two, you're told what you are, right? And then
Hmm?
three, like you have an idea of what you are, and then you're proved that you're completely wrong. And I always like talking to people that had like changed careers. Like to your point
Hmm?
earlier, like your analogy about selling shoes, right? And then got into tech. Like one of the smartest people that I know in tech, like they started like they were doing like they were flipping hamburgers, and then they realized that like I want to do more with my life. I know that I can figure it out. It's just a matter of effort, right? So I mean, back to your question about your kids, like especially, and this is somebody similar to you. Like I don't want my kids to suffer either. Like this, how do you kind of build a story around you need to put in work ethic, and this doesn't go with your kids, this
Hmm?
goes with people that work for you as well. It's like
Yeah.
how do you put the work in, like how do you convince people to put the work in when sometimes they might not have to?
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know. Like on teams, like you think of like I used to be a player, now I'm a coach, right? I lead teams and all that. I don't know that I'm a great coach because like I'm a really good coach when I have all stars. I'm a really terrible coach when I have,
Sure,
non
sure.
right people who aren't driven, people who just coast. So I think my whole career I've tried to select for that. So find the people who are driven. I do love thinking about the fact that you're giving like the three buckets of ways this can happen, and one of them isn't being told what you should do, but like being told what not to do.
Yeah,
Like people who you
yeah,
tell them you can't do that. I remember early in my career, people would say like there's some text replacement engine thing. I forget what the thing was called, some little DOS thing. And they're like, we can't get this down below 30 lines or whatever. The like replacement script. So let's say it was like a regex kind of thing. It was like a
yeah,
replacement script. And I got it down to 2 lines. And I was like, ha. And then they were like so pissed they got it down to 1 line, but they didn't think it would be done. It was, so when you tell somebody they can't do something, you can see who kind of rises to the challenge. When we used to hire remotely, so I've been doing so we're at the WordPress company, Automatic. We have 1,500 people all over the planet. We have no offices. It's very much like a distributed company. But I was doing that 5 or 6, 8 years before WordPress existed. So I've always run my own distributed companies. And what I learned when I was looking for talent was that, okay, I'm no longer limited to hiring geographically, that only people who can work within, an hour's commute of the New York City office. I can get people anywhere. We had one team that had 8 people in 7 time zones, right? Pretty amazing.
yeah,
But when you go and you cast a wider net geographically, you have to cast a narrower net logically,
mm,
which is I need to find the crazy people who would be doing this on a Saturday at 4 in the morning, even if they weren't being paid. Like I need to find the people who probably run their own business, who know how to juggle 5 customers and then like add a sixth without losing any of the other five, right? You need to find those people who are probably a little psychologically like have something to prove. They've
sure,
got like something off in them, and they're just a little bit angry, right?
yeah.
They're hungry and they're angry. So I'd say I've gotten good at spotting that kind of talent. But man, if you hand me a team that has 3 of those people who are really driven and 7 of the people who aren't, I don't know how to make those 7 people be like the other 3. I will take those 3 and we'll go away and we'll work with whiteboards and get things done. I don't know how to change people. So it's a good question.
Yeah, I think a lot about giving, like the idea of like giving advice, right? Because I think similar to we were talking about art way at the beginning of the conversation, like advice is very subjective too, because I think it's all fair to say
Mm.
like
Yeah,
you can give somebody some feedback and they depending on who they are and what their history is and what their mood is in that particular point in time, like it's very challenging. And
they hear different words. Yeah.
exactly, right? And the question I have for you is when you are working through trying to iterate or solve a problem, right? And you're working with, like you said, all these different quote unquote crazy people, these people that have like different opinions and different ideologies and all these things, and you have to provide feedback. How do you provide feedback to a group of individuals knowing that every single person is going to take that feedback differently?
So that I'm probably better at. So I'm actually so my own go-to mode is not to like give a bunch of people something to do. My own go-to mode is to join them and do it. So I'm really not a coach on the sidelines. I'm out there on the court, right? Like that's kind of the, so I make things go by putting my own energy into them. And so I would say working with somebody kind of by example and working with them on a thing, I can pull a person through stuff and get them to do the things that I need. Um, I don't know. I'm generally pretty positive with people. Like I don't know. I'm not sure how to answer the question because I
No.
don't. I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think in my opinion, this is somebody that's worked a long time, and I've worked with people that are good leaders and with bad leaders. I think you know thing that I've always seen that's a through line with bad leaders is that they care about a little bit too much about what they say. And I think that good leaders, they feel more comfortable being like transparent about stuff. I think that that's a really, really important skill. Um, but obviously, like there's a level of transparency that can't happen in the real world, right?
Mhm. Oh yeah,
Um, so when you think about a time that you've gone through this process, and obviously you probably handle feedback in a different way than you like to give feedback. So like, do you typically put yourself in the shoes of somebody when you're talking to them, or do you try to net massage your words or massage your point
yeah.
into a
Okay,
way that they're going to
got it.
consume?
Yeah. So there's a few things you mentioned. There was one about sort of the so giving feedback and all that, and there are people who don't understand that if they do say something negative like that, they're like dropping a massive boulder into a lake,
Sure.
massive ripples, right? They don't understand that when they say, oh, this little thing was wrong, people are crushed, right? Because they're so, I don't know, important or influential in their own company, and so that thing can be devastating. With people though, giving the feedback, I think I don't think about the person per se, right? Which is probably good for me. I think about the problem. So I'm a problem solver. And so when I sit down with you and I'm like, Isaac, there's this thing that you do, it's kind of driving everybody nuts, or there's a conflict with this other person. I like you, but like this other person can't deal with you. We just had this conversation with somebody the other day, two people the other day, different conversations. And like the whole thing is like, I support you. I want you here. Like, don't have to worry about anything, but we got to get you through this. We got to solve that. Your job isn't really to solve software problems, it's to solve interpersonal problems right now. And let's look at it. Let's see what went wrong. And let's see how I can help you get to a place where it's fixed. I can't fix it for you. You got to fix it. Like I can't tell them to like you if they don't like you or they have a problem with you. But like how do I work through that? So I think I probably don't approach human problems any different than software problems,
Mm.
which maybe is mean to humans, but it's the way I look at it.
Well, I mean, and that's a good place where I think I'd like to kind of wrap up the conversation. Is like we're in this world right now where a lot of people, regardless of where they are, like in tech or even outside of tech, there's worry about like, oh, does my job change in a way that I don't like my job anymore? I'm very much of the mindset that like no jobs are going away, but jobs are changing substantially, right? And I am completely blunt about this. I think that there's a point in time in the future where software engineers today will not like being software engineers in the future because of just the way things are changing. So, my question for you is like, what is the best way in your opinion to like navigate like this drastic change in how we do work, because we've seen this time and time again, right? Like, somebody made an analogy. It's like, before the compilers, like, but before and after compilers is like,
Right.
like when somebody invented fire or the wheel, right?
Right.
Or you talk
Mhm.
about like the introduction of the web or the iPhone or
Mhm.
you know Kubernetes or whatever like implementation you want to think about, right? Like, so I guess my point is like, what is in your opinion, an effective way to manage transitions in tech like we're having right now?
Alrighty, this is cool. So you mentioned so I actually think of five equalizing waves of technology in my life. Five times when something came out, like you said, the compiler came out. Oh my God, the entire thing has changed, right? The five in my life are open source,
Sure.
came around, so I didn't have to spend 100 grand to have a database. Now I could just, have a database. The next one was the web. The one after that was the cloud. The one after that was mobile, and the mobile wasn't possible without the cloud, right? And the mobile revolution, the iPhone right
Yeah.
on, not the early mobile that didn't count. And then the LLMs, right? Those are the kind of the five things. And in each of those, everything changed. And one thing again, when I look at stuff going forward, the way that I like to look at this is to look in the past and say, like, how if I can see the 6 steps that got us here, I have a good guess at what the next 2 steps are going to be in the future. Otherwise, you're guessing, right? And so, have you ever been to the Computer History Museum
Um,
in Silicon Valley,
I
the
have
one near
not. No.
Google?
No, I've
Mountain
not
Dew?
been to that one,
Okay.
but I've been to similar
So
ones. They have them kind of like they have versions of those sort of museums all over. They have one in Seattle too.
great.
Yeah,
Well, of course, Seattle would. Exactly. Two of the best tech companies ever in Seattle. Um, so when you wind through this, you start in like the 1910s and the 1920s, and you get through the war, and you get through all this stuff into the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and each decade kind of builds on the one before it. So like you were talking about hardware at one point, like there's the hardware of tubes and stuff like that, and then how everything like Bluetooth was invented, or people decided binaries are going to be how the computers work, or the punch cards before compilers, before whatever. Each decade, the thing that you're in is like the biggest thing in the world ever. It's changed everything.
sure.
But it's only because they did the work the 6 decades leading up to that
Yeah,
that you could even do the thing you're doing. So, you talk about sort of like the math and stuff that versus technology. There are people who spend like 60 years of their lives proving some mathematical theorem that actually made LLMs possible, right?
yeah,
They're not going to make the billions of dollars on it. And like literally there's a story about it. Like a guy comes downstairs and he's like, oh my God, I figured it out. And he tells his wife, and they're both like in their 80s. And he's just been working in math in his attic or whatever. And it's his life's work. This one stupid theorem. He makes no money for it. He makes like a minimal whatever. And she's crying and he's crying because like that was, and then he dies. And like that was it.
yeah,
He's like a footnote in the billions of dollars as LLMs. It's kind of wild. So you have everything that led up to now was the biggest thing that decade. So LLMs right now, these things going on, all this stuff, agent harnesses, and it's all changed. 10 years from now,
yeah,
I don't think they're going to talk about this, that it's, like I think things did change, but like it's just going to keep changing is my point. And when I think about jobs changing, I think what people don't spend enough time doing is thinking about what is the point of your job? What is your fundamental business equation? I make this thing and I sell it for this, right?
yeah,
Like what is that thing that you do? And as we're looking at like the future of content management, the future of CMSs, what does it mean to have this like CMS WordPress or whatever as your like source of truth? You know, I step back and I go, what business are you in? What kind of conversions are you trying to get on the website? What are you doing? And if you can't deconstruct the parent company business, then the job that you're doing, now back to your person doing a job, I'm writing, I'm coding, I'm whatever. Like solving for your job doesn't matter if the business is broken, if the
yeah,
business doesn't survive this, right? So you have to step back and say, we're in this business. This is the kind of conversions we need. This is the job of our website. This is your job to help change our website through code or content and kind of deconstruct that. But if you can't describe, it's two things. One is describing your jobs to be done, your daily checklist of like the 812 things you need to do a week, whatever that is, in a way that you can either do it or automate it, because everything's getting automated. But like you can make the perfect checklist of how to do your job, but it might turn out like your job really wasn't a good thing in this business, or this business was a bad idea. So I think there's two levels you have to look at it. Like what am I plugging into and what am I doing myself? Like a factory level and a unit level. I don't know. I'm not that worried about jobs changing. I feel like I stay ahead of everything. I think people can do that, but I would just worry like when you're worried about your job being automated, like maybe that was a good thing. Maybe that job didn't need to exist. I know people who worked in banks that would like save forms and do stuff, and like I'm pretty sure you could do that with a small program,
yeah,
and you don't need. I don't think it's a full-time job. So I think there are other things that will come up that make better use of people.
yeah,
But I'm not. I wouldn't. I don't know. I wouldn't get too wrapped up in the thing that you do today being something that needs to survive,
sure.
because it's not going to.
Yeah,
Everything's going to change.
yeah, and I think what I tell people is frankly like if you're curious about anything that's going on in tech, you will always have a job. Like
Yeah, learn to learn.
yeah, like
Yeah,
the nature of tooling is that new tools will come out because let me tell you, companies that sell tools need to sell
yeah,
more tools, right? So like,
yeah. And then yeah,
yeah, there's not very
and then
many
more.
companies out there that sold you a tool 25 years ago and it's the same tool today. That company
Right.
doesn't those companies don't exist. Brian, this conversation has been awesome. It's been great to, you know, hear a little bit about your upbringing and your getting started story, but also kind of going right into sort of the things that you've seen across your career in tech and business that I think is really prevalent to me thinking about how we manage this world, especially since like we talked about it earlier, the fact that like there's no more barrier to entry to build anymore, right? And I think it's really, really fascinating. I'm very excited to see what people are building. And I want to thank you for your time. And for folks that are curious about Brian or curious at all about what WordPress VIP is doing, you can find Brian on Twitter. That's a good place. So Brian Alvey, BrianAnAlvey. There'll also be some links in the show notes to some other places
Cool.
that you can find him. Before we sign off, my friend, do you have any parting words?
This is a lot of fun. I feel like we covered a bit of open source, maybe not much, and nothing at all about coffee. So I kind of worry I disappointed you
You want to know a
that we didn't get
secret?
to cover
I stopped
what you
drinking coffee.
needed.
I stopped drinking coffee like a year and a half ago. So like,
I've never drank coffee.
oh really? Well, I mean,
I
there
drink
you go.
tea.
We saved. We
I have
saved
these
it.
giant like Starbucks Trenta teas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
But
funny.
this conversation has been awesome. I want to thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time, and I want to thank the people that are watching this live and the folks listening in the future. My name is Isaac Levin. This has been Coffee and Open Source. If you like this episode, be sure to share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe. And for my friend Brian, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
thanks. You too.